think one of the things that I've started to value very much about allowing people to lead and innovate is you can't lead and innovate when your own mind is cluttered. But I value very much uncluttered time, focused time that doesn't involve any digital tools, my phone, my laptop, or anything like that. I find when I have that, my ability to connect with others and with myself is so much better. And so I feel that that's something that's completely undervalued.
Welcome to the 12th Metaverse Meetup in anticipation of the Singularity South Africa Summit. Welcome, everybody.
Celiwe Ross, who is the Group Chief Human Capital and Corporate Affairs Officer at Old Mutual, with over 2 decades in financial services. She brings deep expertise in structured finance, team leadership, and integrated strategy. The first Black female mining engineer in South Africa, Celiwe holds an MBA and is a recognized leader in women's advancement and business excellence. Her work bridges strategy, people, and sustainability to drive inclusive growth and impact. Welcome, Celiwe.
Thank you so much, Mick. Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it's great. I think in today's times, it's more pertinent and crucial than ever to have really solid and strong leadership.
For sure it is. And I think the more the world changes, the more as leaders we deal with complexity and uncertainty, this VUCA concept of the increasing volatility, uncertainty, and ambiguity that's happening in the world, the more the role of leaders is becoming amplified and even more complex.
Exactly. And I mean, from your point of view now, you're in this leadership role. And you started off from in more of a engineering or more of a process-driven role. So, what was the moment or lesson that shifted your focus from processes to people? And what practice should leaders adopt to make that shift real?
So, Mick, you mentioned earlier in your intro that I'm an engineer by training. I mean, after doing my MBA, I kind of transitioned into financial services and very much into kind of executive leadership in financial services now. So I'd be remiss to call myself an engineer, but I think the training is very much, as you said, very much about process, systems, inputs, outputs, etc. And a lot of how I solve problems and come at problems in the world is with that mindset. And when I think about how I've had to adjust that mindset over time as a leader, one of the times that I really learned a big lesson was actually in a systems implementation where we were digitalizing an entire human capital management system in our across the entire company, affecting 30,000 employees. And to be honest, if you spoke to people at the time before the implementation, everybody felt we need a new digital tool, we need to remove the rote and manual tasks, we need to improve the value add of what we do in our area. So it made sense and there was buy-in. But I promise you, Nick, it was not about the technology, because once we went live, the whole system rebelled, not the technology system, people, they rebelled, because people start to fear. In this instance, people started fearing, well, what's my value add if I can't be solving and hand-holding this for line managers? What is my value add when my job has changed? And also, what is my value add when I can't anchor on the things that I was doing before? So very much I had to actually realize that during the rollout and post the rollout, that it was actually not about the system or the process, it was about the people. And I learned a lot about actually how to communicate in driving change, understanding what people's needs are, especially when you're working on something that's as technical as a systems implementation, and then really starting to listen. And I think that those are the leadership practices that, certainly from that experience, I learned that I continue to implement now, which are very much about, before solving for the solution and actually applying the technical lens to it, which is important, it is about listening to people. It is about a level of empathy and understanding what is it that you're hoping to shift. Because many times actually tech implementations are more about people and culture than they are about the technical solution itself.
Totally. And especially now with artificial intelligence coming into almost every sector of our work, it's going to be that same sort of scenario happening.
Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. And this ability or willingness to learn I know we talk a lot about unlearning and relearning. I think those are important, but actually the basis of learning, like realizing that I'm not going to have perfect answers and perfect solutions to everything. And so with a level of humility, how do I find the place where I can learn about this? How can I adjust to how things are changing? And AI is forcing us all to do that at work, at home, in everything that we do. And so I think it's that willingness to want to be taught and to learn and to stretch yourself in areas that you don't necessarily have capacity now.
Absolutely. And, once a mind is stretched by a new idea, it never returns to its original position.
For sure. For sure.
And what, in terms of like how do you actually build a culture where leaders are, are the most connected in the room? What signals, metrics do you look at for like empathy and trust, to make sure that empathy and trust are rising? So you have that empathy with your team.
Mick, I spoke earlier about learning, but part of learning is very much also about reading. And I think the more that I've led and started leading from a fairly young age, but the more bigger and complex my roles have become and the larger my teams have become, I've actually had to invest in learning about how to lead, how to build successful teams, how to build culture, etc. There's lots of great authors out there. A few of my favorites are the likes of Gary Hamel and Robert Anderson. And then I read a lot about successful companies which have built successful cultures. Satya Nadella wrote a great book, the CEO of Microsoft, about, it's called, how can I forget Satya Nadella's book that he wrote as soon as he took over as the CEO of Microsoft. But the most important thing that I've learned in all of the things that I've invested time reading has been about the fact that, yes, leadership is about decision making. I don't think you can shy away from that. Somebody's got to make the tough calls. But it's also about being an integrator of knowledge, an integrator of teams, an integrator of ideas, and then also building collaboration. So this idea of being open to listening, creating open dialogue, making sure that people can share ideas without fearing failure, fearing being shamed at work or being criticized at work. Those have started to shape a lot of how I lead and how I think about building cultures where we as leaders can build connection in a room. In practical terms, I think it involves fostering a more inclusive environment where you value everyone's input. And that also goes to how you build your teams. You can build teams the easy way, which is just to recruit people who look like you, sound like you, think like you, believe what you do. That's easy because you get agreement from people like that. When you build diverse teams, you have to be open to the fact that people will disagree with you, that they'll bring ideas you haven't thought of yet, and that they'll be able to challenge each other in an environment that's safe. And so I think the most important thing actually is to build a level of trust within those teams where people know that failure is allowed, not encouraged. I mean, there definitely need to be consequences at times, but we need to learn from failure. It is an opportunity to learn, even if it has a certain set of consequences. And I think importantly, positioning ourselves or myself as the connector between different teams, learning about what their preferences are, how they work, what they bring into the workplace, both in terms of who they are, but also who they're becoming, and then constantly fostering connection between all of us as a team. You asked me about signals and metrics as well. I think some of the things that I use are open feedback loops at regular cadences of meetings. So I allow times when I give input and give direction, but oftentimes ask for feedback and ask for contribution into how we could do things differently. Also looking at things like engagement, which is something we regularly survey for at Old Mutual, but more than that, it's actually tracking things like retention and attrition. And where are things like performance and retention or attrition starting to merge? So the ability to use data and use data to be able to inform decisions, particularly at leadership, is becoming increasingly important.
I love that. It's like you're actually building a community with your team. It's moving from this org chart power to network power.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as I said, the world is becoming so increasingly complex that I feel like the thing that is connecting us now as human beings is exactly that. It's what makes us human. And just because you work doesn't mean you come at work not being your human self. And I'm my human self because I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. I have my own biases, I have my own challenges, I have my own complexities that I bring with me. And you don't walk into your office and leave all that stuff behind. It's who you are, right? It impacts how we show up at work. And so I feel like investing in understanding truly who people are starts with understanding truly who you are. None of us are perfect people. I'm not perfect, Mick. So understanding what makes Celiwe, what has formed the human being and the leader that I've become, and dealing with the things that I need to work at, and understanding where those things come from, and then understanding that people show up at work exactly in the same way. They need to be invested in doing that work themselves, and then they start to show up at work in different ways. But they also need different parts of me at different times. So how do I pivot and adjust the way that I lead at different moments and times to be able to meet the need of different team members? As I said, you can build a successful team by recruiting people who are exactly like you. It's the easy answer, but it's also the boring answer. It's a cookie cutter team. When your teams are diverse and different, and diversity comes in all forms. It's not just gender, race, those are the obvious differences. But oftentimes you just need people who think differently to you, who come at the world differently than you, who have studied different things than you have. I'm an engineer. I love psychologists and how they think. I love economists and how they think about the world. The degrees that are around philosophy and sociology and anthropology and those sorts of things, those sorts of minds come at problems in different ways. So oftentimes I actually really challenge myself to look for difference when I build teams rather than look for what's the same.
No, I totally agree. There's a great saying from John Hunt, the famous advertising executive. He says, if you embrace diversity, it will hug you right back. And
love that.
Yeah, so he wrote this book of all his sayings that he's come up with over the years. And just in the chat here, Natalie says that you've set such an incredible example as a leader. And Mofoto is saying, hit refresh. That's the name of the book.
Hit refresh. That's the name of the book. Thank you, Mofota. Thank you. That's exactly it. It is such a great book about building successful companies by transforming culture. And more than that, actually, Mick, what's important there is you can imagine Microsoft is a team full of people who are technically trained, engineers, programmers, and the like, who needed to turn around a company. And a lot of what Satya did was really talking about the human side of leadership. He wanted to move this company away from having a whole lot of know-it-alls, so people who are technically very smart, super intelligent, have all the answers, to actually building a culture that embraced vulnerability, the need to learn, and the need to be open to difference. And I mean, we know the story of what Satya Nadella has gone on to build. He's completely turned that company around and made it a $1 trillion or more than $1 trillion market cap company today.
Unbelievable. And MP Kwana is also saying, I bought the book on your recommendation, one of my favorite reads. So I'm actually going to go get that book straight after tomorrow. I'm going to get that book and
I share lots of books, like, and some of the people who are commenting, I know, are mutualites. They work with me at Old Mutual. When it's one of the things that I speak most about, because I consume a lot by reading or listening to podcasts and to audio books, because none of us know it all is the reality. And I think the more senior you become, the larger your roles become. And certainly in an industry like ours that is increasingly complex, deals with competing customer needs, competing and changing employee needs, how we respond to those isn't something that you learn at university. Some of it you learn, of course, as you ascend kind of the ladders of organizations. But a lot of it I've actually learned by speaking to other leaders who are in similar positions to me and reading about other leaders who are in similar positions to me as well.
Now, I wanted to ask you, so, it feels like we're at this inflection point for Africa where this promise meets pressure. So, with a young mobile-first continent and real structural challenges, which leadership models unlock ingenuity at scale? And where have you seen like an adapt, not just an adopt mindset work?
So I've spoken a bit about Satya Nadella. I'm not going to speak about that. Actually, like one of the leadership authors that I am so personally invested in reading about, and I've seen these aspects or these descriptors starting to come into the language of leaders, which is really encouraging. It is leadership models that prioritize things like empathy, vulnerability, and collaboration. These are not technical skills. They can look like soft skills, but they're really hard to do. Brené Brown says that vulnerability is the birthplace of change, of transformation, and of ingenuity, right? It's this ability to know what you don't know and be able to say that you don't know it, for example. And so she highlights the importance of creating a culture where people can be safe actually to take risks, because they don't have to get it right. But they can also value and ascribe to the values of generosity and collaboration as a result of that. I think it's the thing in our continent that culturally we actually value. We as Africans are generally humble as people, and we value this ability of being able to share ideas, share knowledge, share prosperity with each other. And those words are starting to come into the leadership lexicon. And I feel like it's that time, like you said, it's this promise to prosperity. Did you just say promise to? There was another word on the end of that. It's really
pressure, yeah.
Oh, exactly right. So you asked me an example of adapting versus adopting. And again, I think I really want to use a number of tech examples, because I feel like in any leadership role, the ability to marry all of these aspects that I've shared about of empathy and vulnerability and collaboration have to be matched with some sort of transformative skill, right? Not that those aren't, but a lot of what I'm spending my time on is actually understanding the impact of technology, but also leveraging technology as a leader, as a force multiplier in our organization, if I can call it that. And a lot of what we've started doing is actually thinking about how we build academies from a leadership perspective to start to improve the efficiency, but also the understanding of many of our leaders. Instead of importing generic training, we've actually created localized learning journeys for roles like product owners, scrum masters, quality engineers, but also embedding some of the other softer aspects that I've mentioned that are around empathy, collaboration, radical candor. These are big parts of how to lead, even in teams that are technically enabled or technologically enabled.
It's amazing. I mean, and with an organization like Old Mutual, it's so big and it's got so many different parts that you need these types of new systems and new collaboration tools and distributed leadership to actually succeed in the future.
For sure.
So let's move on to a little bit about balancing tech with humanity. And as genAI is shaping financial services from risk modeling and fraud detection, claims, how do you ensure that this augmentation, that there is augmentation over replacement? Mm-hmm. And what guardrails keep human dignity and judgment at the center?
That's a great question, and very much about some of the critical problems we're trying to solve right now at Old Mutual. As I said, I'm raising a number of tech examples because I think oftentimes people look at us as an old company. We've got the name old in our name, right? We turned 180 years old this year as Old Mutual. So lots of legacy and lots of impact over those 180 years. But as you said, genAI is now the next horizon and frontier that confronts not just the financial services industry, but more specifically for those of us in insurance and broader kind of financial industries as well. It's everywhere. But at Old Mutual, we're using genAI not as a substitute for human expertise, but actually as a force multiplier for it. Because if you think about it, insurance at its core is about trust. People give us their money on assumption that at the time they need it, when life has gone horribly wrong, that they'll get something out of it. So it really is about trust. It's about empathy as well, because no one calls Old Mutual because things are going right in their life. Something has gone wrong. A geyser has burst, a car has crashed, and maybe unfortunately a loved one has passed away. So our ability to marry trust, empathy, but also sound judgment and leverage technology is what we continuously work on. So our strategy is, I feel, a progressive one. It aims to embed genAI where it delivers clear value and it enhances things like speed, accuracy, and scale in areas like risk modeling or fraud detection or claims triaging. But it also ensures that our decisions especially the ones with significant human impact, remain under human oversight. We'd never delegate that out. And so in practice, it means for us, AI acts as a co-pilot of sorts. It accelerates insights. It actually improves fairness of outcomes, and it enables faster service. Whilst our people, who we value, provide the judgment, they provide the empathy and accountability that all our customers deserve.
Very, very powerful point. And Tershni Balak also says, such a powerful point, Celiwe. Adapting, not just adopting, is what makes leadership transformation real.
For sure, Kirsch.
Thanks so much for that. And I also think it's about allowing to have that human in the loop for these high impact decisions. As these technologies are going to be doing more of the processes and the tasks, you still need to have that human in the loop.
No, for sure. And I mean, we have to have guardrails around these things. So in order to be able to do that, we must put people before the algorithms themselves, right? You mentioned human in the loop. It's one of our 4 commitments. We do need humans in the loop, because no critical decision that we make, whether it's a claim rejection, a pricing adjustment, a fraud flag, we can't leave those things to AI alone. So we have skilled professionals who always validate those outcomes. But we also value fairness and transparency. So our models must be explainable to our customers, to our regulators, and also to our employees, right? To ensure that we have clarity on why a decision was made. The third commitment that we make is around ethical and regulatory alignment. So we align all of our AI policies with South Africa's responsible AI framework and POPIA from a privacy perspective. We embed privacy, dignity, and fairness by design into these processes. And then the last one, and most important one, I think, is this empathy-driven culture. So we must actively reskill and empower our people so that AI actually augments their own expertise rather than replaces it. It creates and keeps compassion and Ubuntu at the heart of how we serve customers.
Totally agree with that. It's about how do we create these new roles, and you're not just a product owner anymore. You're an AI product owner, or you're a prompt engineer, or you're an AI ethicist. There's all these new roles that are being created that we need to upskill the current workforce to engage with.
For sure. I really think it's about ensuring that technology strengthens rather than erodes the human essence of the work that we do.
Absolutely. And if anyone else has any questions, we are going to be taking a couple of questions from the audience. So if you can just write them in the chat, or if you want to go step up to one of those blue circles, you can unmute yourself and ask any questions. And we do have a digital camera in the room somewhere filming us. So we'll be recording this and releasing it in a week or so. So, thinking about empowering people and giving everyone this chance to lead, what mechanisms or decision rights, incentives, and learning rituals let frontline teams lead and innovate? If a CEO starts next week, what's the first experiment you would have them run, just as an example?
Sure, Mick. I think one of the things that I've started to value very much about allowing people to lead and innovate is you can't lead and innovate when your own mind is cluttered, and when you're running on that hamster wheel from time to time. And so one of the things I feel is greatly underestimated, and probably the first experiment I'd give a new CEO to run, would be like a time to think experiment, where how do we try to find a way where we can give leaders time back? A part of that, of course, is about augmenting our leadership with other productivity hacks, including AI. But I value very much uncluttered time, focused time that doesn't involve any digital tools, my phone, my laptop, or anything like that. I find when I have that unencumbered time, my mind is clearer, my decision-making is sharper, my ability to connect with others and with myself is so much better. And so I feel that that's something that's completely undervalued. And more than anything, I think our organization and many others, to be fair, Mick, are all starting to think about how they democratize decision-making as much as possible. It really is about moving and shifting decision-making as far down as possible to make sure that the right people have the opportunity to make the decisions, particularly when those people are serving customers, right? Those are the people who know what they need to do, and to be able to get them to be empowered to make those decisions in as quick and as informed a basis as possible, and allowing them to be able to take risks when they need to. I feel like this the hierarchical way in which organizations have been built over time is changing. It has to change. I'm not saying that hierarchy, it's inevitable, particularly when an organization is large and complex like ours is, 30,000 people across 14 countries. You do need a level of hierarchy. But you need to be careful when hierarchy creates bureaucracy and impedes decision-making. Then you gridlock the organization. So as much as possible, being able to democratize decision-making as far as possible and create a sense of empowerment where people feel like they can take ownership and run with things unlocks that ingenuity in organizations quite quickly.
Yeah, I think that's so, it's so important to give people decision rights so that they can actually, like you said, they're the ones that are the closest to the customers, and create those experiments. I think Jeff Bezos at Amazon really is pro that type of thinking. If they wouldn't have created AWS, if they didn't have that experimentation culture.
For sure, without a doubt. And mistakes, mistakes are not, they're not a bad thing. When I interview people for roles, and invariably those are roles at the most senior level of organizations, I really interview quite aggressively for failure. In other words, I try to test whether this individual has experienced failure. So they're not perfect, they're not impervious, they're not like this super linear path to success. They've actually failed, but learned how to recover from failure. It's that skill that says, things can go wrong. In fact, things will go wrong. As a leader, you are going to make mistakes, but the ability to be open to learning from them, pivoting and adjusting and kind of reaffirming yourself in that process is a part of the leadership journey, and something that I think we shouldn't underestimate, we shouldn't undervalue, we should encourage it. It builds curiosity, it builds the ability to want to learn new things, and it creates an openness, to be able to handle difference, to be able to have robust conversations. It creates a sense of ownership for my own destiny, for my own team, for my own outcomes.
I think it's so important to reward collaboration and reward, for those right decisions, and at a very high velocity of decision making.
Yeah, no, for sure, no, without a doubt.
And let me ask you: are you using artificial intelligence in some of your decision making, or a lot of people I know are they're actually creating roles within their, if they're the CEO, they're creating different roles in their team that they are bouncing back the ideas with artificial intelligence.
I must say I wouldn't say I'm an early adopter, but I'm definitely a willing experimenter. So very much in my personal and professional life, using as many tools from a productivity perspective to help me. In my role, Mick, particularly when you work firstly in human capital, but also work with and on kind of people processes, I don't think that decision making can. You almost can't formulate it. You can't. Are there frameworks that I can leverage? Yes. Are there places where I can read and learn and try to leverage that from a decision-making perspective? Yes, I can. But actually, I've found over time, the things that have made me more effective have been about creating the time to think, collaborate, the openness to be able to hear different ideas, and also the understanding that really, I don't need a perfect answer to move. The ability to be able to respond quickly is based on conversation, on a level of alignment, and then you've got to call it at a point. Somebody's got to make the decision, and you've got to move on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and we're getting a couple of questions in the chat here. Brendan's asking, how do you balance progressive experimentation implementation in an organization that's stagnated and set in the procedural ways?
You know, Brendan, I want to say something that is contentious. And sometimes you got to realize if you can't change the people, you've got to change the people. Progressive experimentation and implementation it has to be a leadership attribute, right? There has to be an openness to understanding why it's necessary. When you have leaders in an organization that are about protecting what they know, protecting the work and the outcomes of their work, they'll never understand why progressive experimentation and how quick implementation cycles may be necessary. And over time, you may have to start thinking about how you inject new ideas, new people into that process, rather than allowing that to stagnate and become the way that we do things. And oftentimes you have to change the people in order to start to make that shift.
It's like an algorithm change, the people algorithm.
And it's amazing how just with the insertion of someone new, someone with a different experience, they can actually affect and change the mindset of a number of people in the team just because they've never been asked to think that way. And that ability to continuously refresh teams, I'm not suggesting that the solution is always for people to leave. Sometimes it's for people to go and take on different roles, go and experience something in a different market, a different business. You come back thinking differently because otherwise you stagnate. You stagnate in your own growth, but you stagnate the organization as well.
Totally agree. And so Natalie's asking, from your own experiences, what are your thought processes or action plan and how you move on from that realization?
With respect to mistakes.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, Natalie, maybe because I've made them so many times, mistakes, and realized that they're not going to kill me. You know, they, excuse me, they haven't held me back. I've learned the most powerful and impactful lessons, not from the things that have gone right. It's actually from the things that have gone wrong. And so I have a level of personal acceptance that even if I make this decision and it goes wrong, we can overcome it. As a team, we can overcome it. I can overcome it. And so I don't expect that level of perfection for myself or from the teams that I lead. Is it a coaching moment when people do things wrong? Of course it is. There's often times when you have to say, I think we need to do this differently. How do we reset here? How can I help you and how can I assist you? But that's not to say, don't take that step. Don't make this mistake again. Of course, if the mistake costs us a whole lot of money and it really wasn't a well thought through idea, let's talk about how we don't do that again. But I think it's part of the leadership work. It's part of the personal mastery and the internal work we all have to do as leaders.
Yeah, I think as long as you can learn from the mistake and try and improve, or as long as it's improving and it's getting better and it's evolving, then the mistakes are hugely valuable. Like you said, yeah.
For sure. I hope it's going to be a good direction. And I think, oftentimes, Mick, people focus a lot in their careers on promotion, so the upward move up the ladder. But if you've read, also another great book, when Sheryl Sandberg was the CEO of Facebook, she wrote a really great book, mainly for women, but I think it applies to all of us, that talks about the fact that careers are no longer, they don't look like a ladder anymore. It actually looks like a jungle gym where you can make a series of moves, some of which are lateral, some of which are downwards moves that allow you to make big upward leaps in that jungle gym. So I really do wish Brendan all the best, whatever it is that he's deciding to pivot into and do. And there's always an opportunity to come back to what you were doing before, but you'll learn so much by accumulating experiences rather than focusing on the ladder.
Kirshni is saying, sharing one of our favorite quotes, technology should reflect our values, not replace them. At its best, it empowers people to do great things. Tim Cook. I think that's a really great quote. Yeah.
Love Tim Cook.
They just recently launched the Apple iPhone 17, I think 2 nights ago.
Are we at 17 now?
17, and they just launched the iPhone, the thin iPhone, the iPhone 17 Air. It's a super thin phone. They launched about three different models and a new watch and a whole bunch of new features. AirPods that translate while you're wearing them, so you could be chatting to me in Japanese, and it would translate it into English in real time.
Wow, I missed that launch. That's amazing. Love Tim Cook. He's written a great book as well.
Has he? I haven't seen that.
He's got a great book about transitioning a CEO after the death of Steve Jobs and taking over the reins at Apple. It's a great book.
Wow, yeah, he's done a fantastic.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. Everyone in the audience is learning and reading and having focus. It's almost like you're practicing your skill, because as a leader, it's having that focused time to learn and to practice, which makes you much better in whatever role you're in or whatever you're trying to. So I think we are running up onto the hour. If there's any last questions, please you can write them in the chat. And thank you so much, Celiwe, for sharing these incredible thoughts. You are a leader in the exponential age, which is very exciting. And everyone in the audience, we hope that we will see you soon at the Singularity South Africa Summit, taking place on the 22nd and 23rd of October, 2025, in person and in Ubu, in the metaverse. And if you haven't taken part in the treasure hunt there in the main hub, you can walk through. There's a portal on the side of the room where you can take part. We are giving away a ticket, an in-person ticket valued at 19,500 Rand, and a metaverse ticket valued at 5,500 Rand. For the top on the leaderboard, we will be doing a raffle for the top 10 on the leaderboard. Another great book. Karen saying, very insightful session. Thank you so much. We've got Kirshni saying, great book, The Visionary Who Guided Apple After the Death of Steve Jobs. Thanks, yeah. Looking very good to seeing that. Great to meet you. Thanks, Ubu. Gareth, thank you. Brendan is see you all at SU 2025. Great, Brendan, we're excited to see you there. And if there are any other questions, we can take probably one more question before we knock off. Otherwise, Celiwe, where do you find the time to read all these books based in the role? Do you sleep?
I do. I have to. I'm one of those people who needs 6 to 8 hours of sleep. I don't know how people function on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. My mind is clearer when I've had a proper night's sleep, so I really value sleep. I read a lot of audiobooks, which I will listen to whilst I cook or sometimes whilst I garden, mostly whilst I exercise as well. I feel like I can do those two things at the same time. I also live quite far away from our office, so have a decent commute into the office, and I use that dead time to listen to books and podcasts. I do a lot of that.
I'm the same. Also, we've got the sleep doctor coming, Michael Brace, to talk about how to be better in bed. How to have better sleep, which really improves your cognitive function. And Vivian Ming, I don't know if you know Vivian Ming. She's also a Singularity faculty. At the one summit, I saw her pacing around the speaker room, and I said to her, "What are you doing, Vivian?" And she was like, "No, I'm listening to a book." She doesn't waste a moment of time. Even if she's got any moments, she's always trying to learn or upskill herself whenever she's got free time.
Yeah, and I mean, there's micro learning now. You don't have to go and enroll for a whole course and invest hours and hours. There's room for that, and sometimes that is necessary. But with some of these things, it really is about finding. It's like those shorts in YouTube. There's so many things that you can learn when you follow the right people on whichever podcast platform that you listen to, and you start to get those little nuggets of wisdom along the way. I value that sort of stuff. And because either through the books that I'm reading or podcasts that I'm listening to, you always get the next best recommendation, and you can use AI for that. And then kind of listen to these books in bite-sized chunks whilst doing some sort of activity as well.
Absolutely. Also use ChatGPT can summation the book really well, or give you the key areas. If you can actually put a YouTube video into what's it called? It's one of Google's products. It's
Notebook LM.
Notebook LM, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a great one. Notebook is great.
Get all the gems out. But thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you at the summit, and and thank you to everyone being here. Yeah, make sure to make your way to the main hub and like and subscribe on Exponential Africa. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mick. Cheers, everyone.